Shalom, welcome back to part 2 of the moon cycle talks. Now again, reading from Bereshit, as Genesis chapter 1 verses 14 to 19, but without the amplifications in this case. And the Mighty One, he said, let there be luminaries in the expanse of the heavens, to separate between the day and between the night, and let them be for signs and for appointed meeting times, and for days and for years, and let there be luminaries in the expanse of the heavens to shine upon the earth. And thus it came to pass. And the Mighty One, he made 2 magnificent luminaries, the greater luminary to rule or have dominion over the day, and the smaller luminary to rule or have dominion over the night, along with the stars. And the Mighty One, he set them in the expanse of the heavens to shine upon the earth, and to rule in the day and in the night, and to distinguish between light and between darkness. And the Mighty One, he said, and the Mighty One, he saw that it was good. Then there existed evening, and then there existed morning, the 4th day. Now these verses, as I said before, they must be the foundation for the whole study, and everything must be built upon this foundation. And if the foundation is sure, then the whole house will be able to stand, no matter what is thrown at it. So let's take a look at these verses to get a good understanding of what they are actually telling us. The first thing we must understand is what exactly is a luminary. Now, according to the Oxford Illustrated Dictionary, a luminary is a natural light-giving body, and luminous means to be emitting or full of light, shining bright. So straight away we see that Yahuwah is setting in place bodies which give off natural light, be it self-generated like the sun or reflected light like the moon. It doesn't matter, they're still giving off light. Now the purpose of these luminaries is to separate light from darkness, from what is good and beneficial from what is obscure and pointless and needless and nothingness. And the whole, I mean, there is a whole teaching here regarding the luminescence of our Messiah, separating us out of the darkness of the world and man's religious systems, but that will be for another talk. Now the purpose of these luminaries are to set the times, the days and the years, but also the Moedim, the appointed meeting times of our Father, the 7 called out assembly meetings, starting with Pesach and ending with Sukkot. Now, you would never guess that these luminaries are there and have been set in place to give us timing of our Father's feast days and assembly days within the normal translations that we have to hand, because they translate the word Moedim as seasons, which falls far short from its true meaning. And yet that is one of the main reasons they are there. I mean, let's face it, seasons could be anything. It could be the 4 seasons, it could be the wind, the spring, the summer, the autumn and the winter. That's what it could mean, that. And most people would take it as that. They wouldn't relate it or connect it to the called out assembly meetings. So if Yahuwah planned for these 7 meetings on the 4th day of creation, which he obviously did, because he says it here, many thousands of years before man would even set foot on the earth, then we can safely say that he attaches great importance to them. And as the luminaries are still in the sky doing their appointed tasks, then that fact alone implies that the feasts of Yahuwah are still to be attended to by his family, his children. They are there for an appointed purpose. Now, verses 16 and 17 are the most important for this study. In them we are told that 2 magnificent luminaries are set in the heavens. One to rule over or have dominion over the day, the sun, and the other to rule over or have dominion over the night, which is the moon. Now, the stars also mentioned, but they're not pertinent to this study for today's talk. And they do have a lesser purpose, but the two main bodies we are concerned with are the sun and the moon. Now, these are here. The sun especially is to set the days and the years, but also as well as the physical seasons that the earth goes through during its rotation around the sun. The seasons are caused by the tilt in the earth's axis. The moon is in place strictly for the Moedim, nothing else. The moon isn't in place to set the times for Sabbaths, for weeks, for days, for years. It's there simply to tell us when the Moedim are, the appointed meeting times of Yahuwah. Now, the most important aspect of these verses is that the sun shines upon the earth during the day, and the moon shines upon the earth during the night. It is these illuminated bodies which are the signs for all things, for all timings. Now, where the moon is concerned, it must be referring to the full moon and not conjunction moon. I mean, the full moon is a time when the light is coming off the surface of the moon at its fullest intensity. When the moon is in conjunction, it is giving off no light whatsoever, and it cannot be regarded as a luminary. It is referred to as a dark moon. It cannot be seen. So it's not, one, it cannot be used as a sign to set the feast. It's impossible. It's not a luminary. It's turned Father's words upside down, back to front, inside out. Now, the conjunction moon happens once a month, and that is a phase. That's a once a moon phase month. That is how long it takes the moon to completely go through all its phases. And it is where the moon passes between the earth and the sun. And so it's because of this that there's no sunlight can actually shine upon the surface of the moon that we see. It reflects nothing. And it's because of this fact alone that the conjunction moon cannot possibly be what is referred to as the new moon. It cannot be used as a sign to show when the feasts are, because no one can see it, and it is not illuminated. It's not fully illuminated at all. And it's the same for the first sliver when you think about it. The first sliver is about 12 hours after what we call the new moon, or the dark moon, and it's giving off a tiniest piece of light. Just a small portion of light, a very small percentage of its full illumination. Again, and it's not shining much upon the earth. It's not giving much light. Again, for this reason, the first sliver cannot be classed as the luminary. It is starting to rebuild, absolutely, but it is not illuminated. It can only be the illuminated moon which should be used for the setting of the meeting times, and not the conjunction or the first sliver. You know, people start to get scared and nervous when we start thinking of astronomy. They tend to get it confused with astrology, which is something entirely different. Yahuwah himself set in place the sun, the moon, the stars to set the times and the seasons, and the study of these things, or these cosmic bodies, is called astronomy. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the study of astronomy. As a matter of fact, it's a good thing to do, as we are doing now, at least in part, in a tiny part. But astrology is something entirely different. Astrology is the ancient practice that assumes that the position of the stars and the planets have a direct influence upon people and events. Supposedly, one's life pattern can be charted by determining the positions of the stars and planets at the time of one's birth. That chart, the chart that attempts to accomplish this, is known as a horoscope, and it's got a good name. It's a horror. It is as if these celestial bodies have some influence over us. They don't. It's pure paganism, and the study of such things is strictly forbidden in Scripture. Look at Deuteronomy 4:19, 18:9 to verse 14, and also 18 chapter 18 verse 18 to 22, also 2 Kings 21:6, and there's a load of others that speak against it. But the constellations themselves are mentioned in Scripture, and as Bereshit tells us, that we are to study them and use them to discover days, seasons, years, and the festival times. And Job, which is called nowadays Job 38:31 to 33 tells us, and it says, "Can you bind the bands of Kimar, which is now known as Pleiades, or open the cords of Kesil, which is now known as Orion? Can you bring out the constellations in their proper time, or can you guide Arcturus, which is known as a Great Bear, and her sons? Do you have intimate knowledge of the prescribed rules of the heavens? Do you set the starry sky on the earth?" Now these are all questions. So obviously the study of the stars and the planets, there's nothing wrong with them. But when we become arrogant and start changing everything, then we'll ask the question, can we change? Can we really change anything? Okay, we try and change what God's word says and means, but can we change anything? No, we can't. And also, as if we read in further on that, you can actually see Job 9:9 and Amos 5:8. Now, Revelation chapter 12, verse 1 tells us, "And a great sign was seen in heaven, a woman clad with the sun, with the moon at her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars." Now, the 12 stars in this verse are the 12 constellations which the earth passes through in its orbit around the sun on the ecliptic plane. Also we see the woman, the earth. She was clad with the sun, that is, the sun was above her, and its light was shone upon her, and the moon was at her feet. This is a sign of the full moon, not the conjunction moon. This only occurs when the moon is at the feet of the earth and the sun is at the head. The days and the seasons. Now, a solar year consists of 12 months, which are represented on the ecliptic plane by the 12 houses or tabernacles of the sun. See Psalm 19:4-6. Each house represents a 30-degree segment, totaling 360 degrees for the solar year. These are the astronomical signs which the earth passes through, remembering the earth orbits the sun in an annual trip of 365.25 days. And also note that the tilt of the earth is the reason for the changing seasons. And the closer we get to the equator, is like here in England we have 4 seasons, but if you're on the equator you have just a single season, I believe it is. It might be 2, but if you go like somewhere like Jerusalem, you'll only have 2 seasons. Now the question is, how do we tell the start of the year, or how do we tell the timing of the seasons? Now within the solar cycle there are 4 naturally occurring times during the course of the solar year that are easily discernible from the earth. They are: 1 is the spring equinox, often called the vernal equinox. The second one is the summer solstice. The third one is the autumn equinox, and the fourth one is the winter solstice. The equinox happens when the sun is over the equator and the days and nights are of equal length. The spring equinox, observed from Jerusalem, happens on the 16th of March, and the autumn equinox happens on the 18th or 19th of September. The solstice happens when the sun is at its furthest point from the earth. The summer solstice happens on the longest day, around 16th to 17th of June, and the winter solstice happens on the shortest day, around the 17th or 18th of December. Now, when the sun goes over the equator at the spring equinox, the days grow longer in the northern hemisphere and shorter in the southern hemisphere. When the sun goes over the equator again at the autumn equinox, the cycle reverses, and the days in the southern hemisphere grow longer and shorter in the northern hemisphere. So, as Jerusalem is in the northern hemisphere, all timing for the days and seasons and years must be taken from that perspective. Therefore, it makes perfect sense that the spring equinox be the start of the year, and the day of the equinox is day 1 for that coming year, which is normally what we call the 16th of March. Now, there's an interesting word in the Hebrew. It is tekufa. It's Strong's number 8622, and it means a turning, to circulate. It can mean a solstice or an equinox, as one season turns into another. It can mean cycle. It can mean year's end, and it only occurs 4 times in the scriptures, as far as I can see, and they are Exodus, which is Shemot 34:22, Exodus Shemot 43:22, 1 Shemuel 1:20, and Psalm 19:4-6. And I'll read them. Exodus 34:22 states, "And it came to be, at the coming around of the year, the army of Aram came up against him, and they came to Yehuda and Jerusalem, and they destroyed all the officials of the people from out of the people, and all their plunder they sent to the king in Damascus," which is today's Damascus. Exodus 43:22, "And you shall apply the festival of Shavuot to yourself, the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the festival of the ingathering, at the summer solstice of the year." Again, that's Tekufa. I've translated this as a summer solstice for the simple reason that the wheat harvest gathered, depending on the late rain, etc., was either from late May to late June, and the summer solstice fits right smack bang within that time frame. Now, 1 Shemuel 1:20, "And it came to be at the turning of the days, Hannah, she became pregnant, and she bore a son, and she proclaimed his name Shemuel, because from Yahuwah I asked for him." And boom, 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 boom. At the turning, again, that's Tekufa. Psalm 19:4-6, "In all the earth their measuring cord goes out, and in the extremity of the inhabited earth their words. For the sun he has set a tabernacle in the heavens, and he like a bridegroom leaving his bridal chamber, like a strong man running his path, rejoicing. From the ends of the heaven it's going forth, and it's coming around Tekufa upon them again, and nothing is hidden from its glow." Now, these 4 mentions of the word Tekufa, I'm wondering if they are an implication of the 4 seasons, for one season turning and cycling into another, and cycling through all 4 seasons and coming back to the beginning again. That was just a thought. Whether it is or not, don't know, but it's just a thought. Now, the instructions for Passover give us support for the season in which the year starts. Exodus 9:31-32 tells us, "And the flax and the barley were struck, because the barley was budding as Aviv." And now Aviv means spring, young ears of grain, tender young green shoots. The name of the city Tel Aviv means spring hill. Now, but the wheat and the emmer were not struck because they ripen late, which is sometime between mid May and June. Now those two verses were talking about the judgment of thunder and hail coming on Mitzrayim just before the actual Passover event, and they tell us it was a spring and that the barley was coming to its time for harvest. So this must be the period around the spring equinox. Deuteronomy 16:1 says, "Observe God and preserve the restored moon, Kodesh," meaning newness, to renew through restoration, replacement, or renewing, moon or month. Observe God and preserve the restored moon of the tender green shoots. And that's the time the tender green shoots of barley is coming up. And you do Pesach, which is Passover, to Yahuwah, your mighty one. Because in the restored moon, Kodesh, of the tender green shoots, Yahuwah, your mighty one, he brought you out from Mitzrayim at night. Now, again, I've translated the Aviv because it's not a name of a month. It's just the restored moon in the time of the tender green shoots. And to me, it's that simple. When we see those tender green shoots around around the area of Jerusalem, that is when we count for Pesach. Now, in this Scriptures 98 translation, Deuteronomy 16:1, it says, "Guard the month of Aviv and perform the Passover to Yahuwah your Elohim, for in the month of Aviv, Yahuwah your Elohim brought you out of Mitzrayim by night." As you can see, they, like most others, leave out the definite article before the word Aviv. They have also translated the word Kodesh as month instead of moon. This, along with Exodus 12:2, will give the impression that the year starts at the full moon, which means the New Year's Day will always be on a different part of the year due to the astronomical fact that the moon cycle is different from the solar cycle. Now, in Exodus 12:2 we read, "This restored moon, Kodesh, is to you the head of moons, or the beginning of renewed moons. It shall be to you the first restored moon of the year." Now, we can clearly see that the start of the year is in the springtime, and the solar year must be based on a solar cycle, because that's how long it takes the Earth to go around the sun, and there must be a fixed point in the springtime for the start of the year, and that fixed point can only be the spring or the vernal equinox, where the day and the night portions of the day are of equal length. And if we use the moon phase for the first day of the year, then that first day is never fixed, and it's forever cycling around a period of about 3 to 4 weeks. Now, I know Yah is a mighty authority of order, and he does indeed fix points in time, so I believe he would have fixed the point for the start of the year and not have a roving one. Now, the word Kodesh, which I've translated as restored moon, people, if we just translate that as month, this month is to you the head of months. People automatically equate the first day of the month is the first day of a new year. But no, that's not something that is said here. It's the head, the Rosh, the chief, top, head. You can actually, it can mean the beginning of moons. This restored moon is the head, or the beginning, the first of renewed moons. It shall be to you the first, the former, the chief, the foremost restored moon of the year. It doesn't say this month is the first month of the year. It's a first restored moon for the year when the barley is in the tender green shoots. It's not talking about the first day of a year. So if we translate this word Kodesh as restored moon instead of month, as all translators do, then we will get a more ordered picture, using both the moon and the sun. And let's face it, if Yahuwah, he did, not if, but he gave us both the moon and the sun for the setting of the days and the Moedim. It's as simple as that. And we should use both. And if we disregard one, then we are disregarding part of Yahuwah's instructions. And by doing so, we will get it wrong. And there is no doubt about that, because we are only using half of his allotted tools. Also, and this is a very big important point, if we put aside and disregard part of instructions, his Torah, we are disregarding the part of the sun has on the setting of the days, etc. It's doing exactly that. You are putting aside part of the Torah. We are taking away from his words, something we are expressly forbidden to do. But whether you are or not is up to, only you can decide that. Take it before Father. Now, I believe that there are two calendars at work here, which doesn't sound as complicated as it first seems. The first, in fact, using a two calendar system as a united whole, we get a very clear picture of when the feasts are to take place, and it doesn't seem so strange either. Let's face it, a man and woman will become one united flesh. We are one people, so there is for a unitedness, a coming together like this. There are many precedents. So if we take the two calendars, a moon phase and a solar, or take the solar calendar and overlay the moon phase calendar, we get a great picture. Now the start of the year on that basis will always remain fixed at the spring equinox. There will be no problem with the length of the year, because of 365 days and a quarter days, as long as the year will be as long as it is. The feast will always be on the correct time and date for that year. Also, if we leave out the names of the months and the names of the days, but instead use a total numbering system, all of the pagan influences will be eliminated in one fell swoop. And if to build a calendar on this basis, you would have to link it to our modern calendar, otherwise we will not know what is what, because our world is so used to the system that we're using today. And if we introduce a new system, it gets very difficult at the best of times. So to make it easier, we have to link to the modern system. So we use a calendar which is 1 to 365 or 366 days, and link it to the modern calendar. So the sun's allocated function is the setting of the days and the years, and also the changing seasons. But the illumination of the moon had a far lesser role to play in this area. But it does have a major role in the setting the times of the feast, a role in which the sun has a much lesser part to play. Now, another point to bring out here is that in verse 14 of Bereshit we are told that the luminaries are there as signs for days, years and appointed meeting times. They are not there to set the weeks or Sabbaths. I mean, people try to get the Sabbaths based on the moon phase. It cannot be done. The moon is not there for that. And there is nothing whatsoever said about Sabbaths and weeks within the text in any way, shape or form. Okay, there's no mention of seasons in the actual text, but the sun and the tilt of the earth does have an effect on the seasons. The only reference to a weekly cycle is the 6 days of work followed by the 7th day of rest, a Sabbath. But there is absolutely no mention of a week at all. Also, the first day of a year might not and does not have to be or fall on the first day of a 7-day cycle. Indeed, the first day of the year, most probably the day after the spring equinox, or dawn, starting dawn after the spring equinox, could fall on any one of the 7-day cycle. And the same is true for the month. The luminaries, the sun and the moon, are not put there for signs for the months. They were put there, as the word tells us, for days and for the Moedim. Many people will disagree with that, but I can't help that. And I believe this is where so many problems arise from. They're trying to align the first day of a year with the first day of a month with the first day of a week, and it's it can't work, because the moon cycle is a 29.5-day cycle, and it just doesn't fit. And some years you're going to have 12 moon phase cycles, and other years you'll have 13 moon phase cycles. But overlaying one on top of another eliminates any problems. And as long as you don't try and set the Sabbath by the moon, it eliminates all problems. And I see the simplest way to use the sun and moon and the stars to set the days, years, and the Moedim is to set the New Year's Day as the dawn after the vernal equinox, and the reason is being one of simplicity. And today, as it were, being the observable, that day as it were being the observable day of the equinox, then tomorrow at dawn must be the start of a new year, day one, so to speak. And the previous day was day 365 or day 366 of the previous year. And keeping things simple makes for far, far fewer mistakes. Understanding that the first day of another year does not mean it has to be the first day of a week or the first day of a new moon cycle makes things simple. This way there can be 365 or 366 days. It will not matter. It doesn't matter. And it will never interfere with the weekly Sabbaths or the called out assembly meetings. Now, talking about the weekly Sabbaths, I believe this does fall on the day we call Saturday, because of the historical record. It goes back over 2,000 years. The Hellenists, the early Jewish historians, the ancient Roman writings, they all recalled the Jewish Sabbath, and it has remained the same day throughout. And also Yeshua, when he walked the earth, he never once accused the Pharisees of the religious leaders of having the wrong day, but he did lambast them over their keeping of it and all their traditions. So I believe that we're safe on the actual day being a Saturday, what we call a Saturday. So we just have to synchronize this day with maybe a restored calendar using the numbers of the days of the year rather than names and months and things. Okay, that's it for part 2. In part 3 we'll be looking at the new or renewed moon, and we'll be looking at Kodesh. So I should say shalom for now. Shalom.